Hello, everyone. Welcome to DILAN Delivers, a free webinar series sponsored by DILAN Consulting Group in San Francisco, California. Today's topic is mental health. Shift happened, featuring Michael Puck and Natasha Senra Pereira. My name is Paul Bayonne. I'm a senior consultant at DILAN, and I'll be your online host today. Briefly, DILAN Consulting Group is a team of psychologists who work with organizations to build their leadership and team capabilities. Our motto is, business is human. The way we see it, our clients are experts in their field of business. And we at DILAN are experts about people and about understanding and shaping their behavior. When we merge these expertise domains together, that collaboration helps leaders, teams, and individuals unleash the human potential that enables their organizations to thrive. The goal of our free DILAN Delivers webinars is to present content that you might find both interesting and helpful in your and your organization's work efforts. We are video recording this webinar for posting on DILAN's YouTube channel. You will soon receive an email from us with a link to this recording, as well as a link to the feedback survey about the webinar itself. On your Zoom screen, you should see both a chat button and a Q&A button. The chat function is going to be used, I think, extensively today by our two presenters. So be ready to go ahead and chime in via the chat function. If you have questions for our presenters or for me, you can use the chat function as well. In addition, if you just have questions about the program overall in general, or you have specific technical issues about the Zoom presentation that you need to ask me, go ahead and pop those inside the Q&A function, and I'll be able to respond to you directly that way. We will be taking questions about the last 5 or 10 minutes of the hour's presentation. So if you want to wait to give you your questions until then, that's fine as well. And now let me go ahead and introduce today's presenters. Michael Puck has had 25 years of HR experience. He's a certified, senior certified professional with the Society of Human Resource Management, published author, TEDx speaker, great innovator and change agent, and is currently a global partner in the UKG Human Insights Group. Natasha has been a registered social worker and psychotherapist for the last 17 years in Canada's largest mental health hospital and private practice up in the Toronto area. She's also a published author and is highly driven by the newest research in neuroscience. So with all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and drop out of the picture here and let our presenters take it away.
Paul, thank you so much. I would say we are very excited to be here because Natasha and I not only love to talk about mental health is also something very personal for us. So we have compelling data and insights, but we will also share stories with you. And on the note of stories, let me start out with a story. So this is by far my favorite early childhood picture because it captures in a single image my personality as a toddler, full of energy, always a smile on my face, and according to my parents, up to no good. Now, on a summer morning in 1970, I was in my parents' backyard picking strawberries and also eating plenty of them. And after just about 20 minutes of crawling through the fine gray dirt of the strawberry field, I had completely turned myself into one sticky mess. A combination of strawberry juice and gray dirt was all over my entire body. So back in the house, my mother said, "Young man, you need to clean up," pointing towards the bathroom. Now, I was a very independent young man at 4.5 years. And so I figured the easiest way was to climb into the bathtub. And I made it up to the edge of the bathtub, then lost balance and was sliding into the bathtub, trying to hold on to something. And what I got a hold of was the lever controlling the water flow and the temperature. There was no delay. The boiling water started pouring down on me instantly. And paralyzed by the pain, the only thing that I could do was to scream at the top of my lung. until my mother came running. But the damage was already done. I was rushed to a hospital and after surgery put in isolation care. I was in pain, surrounded by strangers, could barely move in an unfamiliar environment. But what I remember the most, no, quite honestly, the only thing that I remember is feeling abandoned because nobody came to visit for 10 long days, not even my parents. These 10 days transformed the happy, energetic 4-year-old into a very difficult to manage boy who had disabling fears and withdrew from social interaction. I was a nightmare for my parents from that point forward. This went on undiagnosed and untreated for the better part of a decade, until I fell in love with an amazingly beautiful girl. It was incredible to feel the rush of love. It brought me back to life because I had spent so much time in a dark and lonely place. It was incredible to feel this rush of love. I remember sitting on the kitchen floor waiting for dinner when she first appeared. My heart started racing and my preteen brain couldn't keep up with all the emotions rising to the surface. One moment, I was laughing so hard I could barely breathe. The very next moment, I got all choked up and had tears in my eyes. Although we had never met before, she acted as if I was her long-lost soulmate. She greeted me with excitement, jumped on my lap, and started licking my face while I inhaled her sweet puppy breath. Cora became my partner in meeting the world with fresh eyes. She took me everywhere that I hadn't had the courage to go. On walks, she ran up to strangers, pulling me along behind her. She was curious about everyone who crossed our path. And suddenly, I was talking with people, a lot of people. Cora pulled me out of my darkness and isolation, and I started to enjoy life again. Needless to say that dogs have become a central part to my life up to this day. And these days, I'm helping animals by running a global nonprofit dog art gallery that aims to save 1 million dogs by 2030. But enough about me. I would love to hear if we have any dog and cat lovers on the call. And if you wouldn't mind, please honor your furry companion, past and present, by entering their names into the chat function. And while you do that, I will jump into the agenda to give you an overview of what Natasha and I are going to talk about. Haley and Lou, Camper, I love Camper. Jet, Teddy. Can I see who is a cat and who? No, not really. Excellent. Yeah, keep typing them in. This is great. So here's our agenda. So Natasha and I will start off with defining mental health because there's a lot out there. And so we wanted to have a common platform to speak from. And then we look at mental health and the impact on business. Right after that, we will reverse the lens and look at how the workplace impacts mental health. And I would guess that we have some aha effects once we get to that section, maybe even before that. Then we'll talk about promoting emotional safety in a very pragmatic way and overcoming loneliness. And again, you will receive some tangible recommendations from both of us that you can immediately implement. And with that, I am super excited to ask Natasha to walk us through the 3 pillars of mental health.
Thank you, Michael. I first need to point out that I saw the names Flea and Cookie for dogs, which I think is fantastic. My family, our dog, our chocolate lab is Camper. My children named him that because he's our happy camper. So it's nice that we're all in good company here with our furry friends and cats. And thank you, Michael, for starting off with your very personal story. And it's a really important introduction into defining what mental health is. A lot of you, I'm sure, have heard about sort of anxiety disorder or depression or addiction or lots of other various mental health disorders. But it's really important that we actually start at the beginning of that, not necessarily the symptoms that end up appearing, but what's actually going on in our nervous system. And the piece that's really important when it comes to mental health is understanding that at the core of mental wellness is being heard, being seen, and being connected. And I'm just going to go back a little bit to Michael's story where he talks about the little boy that was full of energy and always a smile on his face. And then something happened, which of course we could call a trauma. And not all of us have experienced a trauma like Michael did, but all of us have had experiences in childhood where we didn't feel seen or heard and connected. And in childhood, if that happens chronically enough, or if that happens to the point where it's intense enough or dramatic or traumatic enough, that has an impact on our nervous system. And that nervous system, how it begins to wire in our childhood development, sets the stage for mental well-being, moving on into our adulthood. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next slide. So some of you might have heard the term window of tolerance, but I really prefer the window of presence, because the window of presence means that we're actually here. We're in the room. We're able to respond to what's happening around us. We're clearly perceiving what's going on. We can engage other individuals for help, again, for clarification, for support. That's really important, not just in the workplace, but imagine with your partner, with your children, with friends, with your family. The ability to work through difficulties, issues, and also to get your needs met. When we're here, when we're present, we can actually take in care as well. But in order to be in this window of presence, like Michael was as a child, we have to feel as though our needs will be met. We will be seen, heard, and connected with. And Michael, I'm sure you know this, but the trauma wasn't necessarily the burning, scalding water on your legs or even surgeries that you needed. What we now know, what neuroscience teaches us, it's not the event that happened that causes the trauma. It's the impact of that event on our nervous system. We're no longer open. We're no longer safely trusting the world around us. And this impacts all of us as adults, because even though now, right, with our developed brain, we can say accidents happen, everyone did the best that they could, Michael was incredibly loved. But in childhood, we don't have the ability to have those perceptions. Those 10 days in isolation, as Michael said, the only thing that he remembers was that deep feeling of abandonment and loneliness. So when he came back to his family, that window of presence was gone. He is what we call in the bottom, which would be a freeze or a shutdown, no longer available for that nurturing, that support, that connection. Until, of course, his beloved dog was safe enough to bring him back into that window of presence and to become a thriving adult. So all of you have probably heard about fight or flight, right? It's pretty popular now in the lexicon, which is a good thing because so many of us are dealing with mental health issues, especially over the last couple of years. The piece that I want you to sort of keep in mind is when we're in our window of presence, the adult's in the room. When something feels unsafe, which we now know are called triggers, something triggers the belief that I'm not going to be responded to, I'm not going to be seen, I'm not going to be connected to. All of this is unconscious. Window of presence is gone. We either move into this shutdown freeze, what people call depression, or we flip up into that fight or flight mode. And I don't know about you, and we'll get to it, but I'm quite grateful that I'm petite. I'm only 5'2", because my strategy is always to go into fight mode. And I swear if I was bigger, I would have ended up on the news by now, but thankfully I've gotten a hold of my nervous system. We'll move into the next slide and I'll explain that a little bit more. So what we're now calling symptoms of depression or anxiety or anger management issues or addictions, and now we all talk about people pleasers, these are actually safety strategies that our very young childlike nervous system develop to protect us when it doesn't feel safe to stay in the blue. Some of us go up, which is more of that anxiety, and some of us go down, and some of us have a combination. So I'm just going to list a few of them here and see if any of them sound familiar to you. When I'm safe and open, I'm present. If I get triggered, meaning that I'm criticized or embarrassed or humiliated or feel as though I'm not emotionally safe here, some of us might go into fight. That's when we get puffed up. We need to criticize, control, or defend ourselves. We start getting loud in meetings, right? That's a safety strategy. We're no longer able to hear the other person and conflict ensues. The other one is flight. This is anxiety. This is what we call it. That's the overthinking, the worrying, the obsessive planning. Is that email okay? Should I have said that? What am I going to do tomorrow? We live in the future. Freeze is the I can't think. I go completely numb. I don't say anything in a meeting. It can get so significant that I no longer even go to work. In childhood, those of you that are parents, that'll look like school refusal. The other one, fun, more and more people are seeing this because we're calling it burnout, right? Fun means I want to make sure that everybody likes me to ensure that no one will criticize me. I'll never be embarrassed. I won't be humiliated. I won't be left out of the work party, whatever that is. Those might seem like attractive traits, but they end up becoming a permanent state if it's, right, taken out of the fact that I don't feel safe in the world. So we take on more work, we overpromise, we overgive, we stay late, we burn through our weekends. And then flow, we're seeing a lot more of this. What used to be one drink just to kind of take the edge off, that's I no longer feel safe, I just want to start numbing or riding the wave. So these safety strategies are symptoms and eventually lead to mental health disorders, but they all start back in the wanting to be present and wanting to be seen, heard, and connected. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Natasha. Now, I've heard this a few times. I find it insightful every time you walk through those, because the deeper your understanding becomes around these five, the more you can spot them in your environment. And I think this is really helpful. Now, Natasha, being this psychotherapist she is, that's her lens through which she is looking. Now, I'm an economist by training, so I'll give you a similar view, but a different angle, just to further build in the complexity of this issue. So the stuff kicking us out of the blue, you just learned about the blue from Natasha. When I look at what's happening, and I look at that frequently from a workplace perspective, these individual boxes are factors, compounding factors that can push us out of the blue. So I'm not going through them. I'll give you actually a fictitious example on the next slide using this very structure. But you see lifestyle factors can negatively impact our mental health, physical causes, adverse life experience. So my experience that I shared would fall into the bucket of adverse life experiences, especially if they happen at early ages. Then you have stress, lack of control, inequity. So very common set, and social isolation and loneliness, that layer I ended up putting on top of it simply because of what we all have gone through over the last couple of years. Now, let me show you what this could look like, again, as a fictitious example. On the right-hand side is a mental health spectrum, which on the bottom starts at disorder, goes over languishing, wellness to flourishing. Interesting point here. There is an upside of mental health, and that is flourishing. Wellness is where you're doing well, but flourishing is where you really take it positively to the next level. So let's take a look what's happening here. So in this particular scenario, a family member has an accident. That triggers stress. And I'll take a look at what's happening on the mental health spectrum. It moves down. What else happens? A bad manager is being assigned. And I think all of us probably know how much a bad manager can negatively impact how you feel and therefore your mental health. What happens on the spectrum? It goes further down. Then we have COVID-19 hits. We all experience that. We're moving further down on the spectrum. One more thing, unmet expectations at work. This could be you expected something to happen, like a raise, an increase, something ideally positive, and it didn't. And now you're really moved all the way down to the mental health spectrum because of all these factors. And one of the other key messages here, mental health is dynamic. It goes up and down on the spectrum. Ideally, something happens, and then either over time or because of other actions that are being taken, you move back up. But if you have too many of these compounding factors, all negative building upon each other, you're being pushed down on this mental health spectrum. And I'll share with you in just a minute what that actually does on a large scale. Now, Yeah, please, sorry.
Michael, I just wanted to pipe in because that's so important what you talked about it going up and down, right? When I talk about being in the blue, I want to preface that with saying that even the Dalai Lama doesn't live his entire life and all day, every day in the blue. It's supposed to be dynamic. We're supposed to be flexible. When things happen in our world, right, and in our daily life, we want to be able to go up and down, but we don't want to get stuck there. Sometimes I do have to think more. Sometimes I do need to defend myself. Sometimes I do need to shut down. But how readily and flexibly can I come up and down? Can I come back? And as Michael illustrated, when there are so many factors impacting on us, that is really pushing us out of our window of presence.
Thank you. I think that's very, very important to emphasize. I was just so eager to show off my dog that I jumped to the other slide. So I've integrated some of my own dogs and some I've taken pictures of, but this actually happens to be one of mine, that the pack of 3 that we currently have. So let's talk about the impact of mental health on the workplace. And there's one particular definition, one term that I found really very indicative of what's happening. And it's called the culture of silence. Because there are really 2 parties involved that need to take action that are at the very core to ideally prevent mental health issues from escalating. And on the one hand, it's the employee, but many employees feel very reluctant to bring anything up regarding their mental health. And so there's a lot of stigma around mental health, but the manager at the same time, they shy away from raising the issue because many managers have a fear of making things worse or maybe even causing legal litigation. And so with these 2 parties that have the best opportunity to really address things before they escalate, if they don't take action, then that results really in a culture of silence, and undetected mental health issues can escalate and get substantially worse. The elephant in the room, so hence the picture. Accenture has done research in 2018 and 19, so pre-pandemic, that I like to point out because it had a really important message that I wanted to share with all of you. So their research identified that 90% of individuals were impacted by mental health even before the pandemic. And the headline for their report was, it's not 1 in 4, it's all of us. And while it was 9 out of 10 before, it's certainly, I would say 10 out of 10 or close to 10 out of 10 at this point in time. One other piece, a quick fact visualized in this case. So here we have again the mental health spectrum, this time on a horizon versus vertical. And this is what you normally would see the distribution curve to be. But I wanted to share with you what happened when COVID-19 hit. So you can see there is a small group with a mental disorder, normally defined as 15 to 20% of the population. There's an equally small group that is really flourishing, so where mental health is an advantage. The majority you have in mental wellness, and then there is languishing, coping. And what the pandemic did is it moved the entire bell curve to the left. And so you can probably see the difference between the original curve. Let me just highlight it. What you have in black and white stripes now. This is the additional load or impact that we're facing as a society, that companies, employers are facing because of the pandemic, because the entire curve shifted to the left. And that is substantial. Now, I can't address mental health without talking about finances. So here's one number that I believe is really scary. And that is mental health as a multiplier for healthcare cost. Healthcare cost, especially in this country, is a burden in itself. But when you partner or when you have comorbidities of physical health issues that come along with mental health issues, research has found in a well-known study here that a multiplier of 2.8 up to 6.2% really occurs. That means if something previously cost $10,000. Now you're looking at multiplying that by 2.8 or 6.2 or anywhere in between, because mental health also played a role in this treatment or the disease. And I think that is scary, to be quite honest. And this is an ongoing impact that we will see if we don't address mental health. And now is the time to do it, as I think the spectrum has shown us on the previous page. All right, one more slide here, and then I'll hand it back over to Natasha. In addition to what you've seen so far, which I hope is not too depressing, but I find the numbers quite compressing, only 50% of adults seek treatment for mental health issues. So that means the other 50% is not. And on top of that, and Natasha has something to say to that in a minute, but on top of that, in many areas of this country, impacting about 115 million of our population, which, as you know, is about a third of the total US population, there is a shortage of qualified mental health professionals to the tune of 1 to 30,000 people in order to address mental health issues. And on top of that, Natasha, there is, in not all cases or in few cases, the best possible means applied in order to address mental health issues. So Natasha, if you want to say a word to that.
I can, and Michael, it's so important that you talk about sort of healthcare costs and even the importance of looking at that shift that happened with COVID. What the emerging neuroscience is showing us is that generally speaking, human beings and the autonomic nervous system, we function really well with predictability, reliability, and consistency. We feel very safe in the predictable, which means that we don't have to jump in and out of the blue. All of us were plunged into the unknown. All of us were plunged into what was going to happen. There's a lot of fear. And remember, fear kicks us right out. And so as we're having massive amount of people who are stuck in that fight or flight or in that shutdown, there are neurochemicals that are required to flow through the body in order to keep us there. And that's leading to a lot of the comorbidities that Michael is speaking about. So the great news is more and more people are looking for mental health services. The issue is we really need to update the level of treatment and services that we're offering people, because a lot of the therapies that are being offered are really cognitively based, which is talking about your problems and issues, which I'm sure many of you know it can be helpful to be seen and to be heard and be connected to it with a therapist. But really what we need to do is strengthen our nervous systems and spend more time in that blue, more time in that window of presence. Because as Michael talks about, there's an upside to mental health, right? Those individuals that are flourishing. Well, they're flourishing because they've mastered their nervous system. They've ensured that their nervous systems feel safe and secure most of the time so that they really enjoy the unknown because they can create. They feel so confident in their abilities that they can really take more risks that can lead to more rewards. And so strengthening your nervous system, being more present has so many benefits. And so thank you, Michael, for this. The book that I wrote is actually Talk Therapy Isn't Enough, if you're interested in it, in the sense that it'll talk about the emerging evidence-based research and psychotherapy modalities. And so if you're looking for a good therapist, I highly recommend looking for one trained in one of the modalities I outlined, and I'll explain more of that later. Thanks, Michael.
Excellent. And I'll just add to that very quickly. I was fortunate enough to be an advanced reader of the book. It is very entertaining. It took me 2 flights. I didn't put it down. I almost missed the connection. So it's definitely worthwhile reading, exploring, and it's not great theory. It's very pragmatic on top of that. Now, that already closes out the first section that we wanted to cover, the mental health impact on business. The takeaways: mental health is impacting all of us. I think that's one of the key takeaways, because if you think, oh, that's just 20% of the population that have a disorder specific to mental health, no, it's all of us. Poor mental health is a healthcare cost multiplier. If you're in HR or if you have cost responsibility for business, that is something that can threaten a lot of businesses. And then the other piece, nearly 50% of individuals that should seek help don't seek help. And so that combination of information, I think, is potentially quite threatening. Now, I'm equally excited to share Rosie. Rosie's actually laying next to me about 3 feet away. And if you hear snoring, it's her, because it's her afternoon nap time. And I'm always lucky that I have a good microphone and it's not picking up the surrounding noise because she is snoring heavily. So how the workplace impacts mental health. This is really where I would like for you to pay really, really close attention, because it's an opportunity that we're not frequently enough looking at. But before we do that, I have a little, not quiz, but I like to get your input. So get ready, pull your keyboard close. Here's another opportunity for you to provide input. So let me set the stage. This is from the American Psychological Association, research that they have done, basically looking at what are the most significant sources of stress. And there are 2 that I'm not showing right now, but you can see money, you can see health. Neither of those 2 are surprises. They're both at 64%. So 64% of people said, yeah, my own health is stressing me out, or money is stressing me out. What I'd like for you to give me a number on, a percentage, is family. What do you think? And don't look at the curve and try to figure it out. This is not a curve reflective of the percentages. But what do you think? How many individuals have stated that family is an issue? So just put a percentage out. So we have the first one from Victoria, 75%. So I raised 2 stepdaughters. If I would have been part of that survey, it would have been somewhere in the 90s. Because both of them have moved out by now on their own volition. So, but so I'm seeing percentages ranging 85, 78, 82, 90. So I think it was me. Either you have stepdaughters or you or you have experiences that would suggest that. 79, that's very specific. I'm curious to ask about that. Saul is looking at, oh, Guadalupe, 95. Yeah, that's a stepdaughter scenario. I can tell. So let me show you what this survey came back with. 47%. I was shocked when I saw the 47%. Certainly not the sample that our audience here would average out to. Now, here's another one. The 4th one is work. Now, what percentage, and again, put it in place, what percentage of individuals that participated in the survey suggested that work is a significant stressor? 67, Eugene, again, very specific number, 65, 65, 85, 78. So we're going back up in the 80s here. 80s, there's a 50, 80. 75. All right, so let me share with you 85, 60%. Now, 60%, and again, we don't know exactly what the question was they asked, but 60%, very close to the 64 and the 60, well, both 64s for money and health. So work is definitely in the top 3 for significant sources of stress. In addition to that, there's something happening that I would call a vicious cycle. So take a look at this. There are 2 numbers. I'm sharing one right now. Productivity impacted due to mental health issues. 37% of individuals said, yeah, that's the case. Then work contributed to mental health issues. That's a different survey, very similar results. So this one is 61, the previous one was 60. Now, but what's happening between these 2? There is a reinforcing effect. Because if work is negatively impacting your level of stress, and stress at the same time is negatively impacting your productivity, then this is a reinforcing circle one has to break out of. Or to say it differently, employers need to be aware of this, because they're shooting themselves in the foot by creating environments that are more stress-prone than necessary. And that brings us to what are common causes of workplace stress. Now, I'm not going through this list. You can scan through it quickly. I don't think you'll find any surprises on here, but take a look at it. what I wanted you to see, and this might actually come as a surprise, is this. And let me pull it up all together. This is based on research that the Human Insights team at UKG completed Q1 this year. And it was answering the question, what is it that today's employees expect? And it was a meta-analysis. We looked at a lot of source documents, and we were able to filter out 12 very specific expectation categories. Those are the 12 in the 3 circles. And then we grouped them based on, I'm not going to go into that detail right now. The point I wanted to make here, the absence or negative expression of any of these 12, and again, these 12 are positive, but the absence or negative expression of any of these 12 is also very likely to become a contributing factor for stress. Point in case. People-centric leaders, that's what employees want. They want leaders that are looking at individuals, at people holistically, not just as employees. In the absence of that, this becomes yet another contributing factor that drives stress. And you can pick every one of these 12 and look at it and say, do we have this, or do we express this negatively at work? If so, these are opportunities to remove, and they do much more than just addressing mental health. They also allow individuals to engage, to attract individuals, to retain individuals. This here is very much the key to the current problem that we're facing and the many resignations we have seen over the last 12 months. But again, I just wanted to make the connection to mental health because I think that's really important and not necessarily what people normally think about first.
And Michael, you'll see that underlying these 12 core employee expectations are the 3 pillars of mental wellness.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
They want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be connected with. It really just runs through the entire need that human beings have.
We could have saved us 3 months of research, reading hundreds of documents, if we would have gained that insight a little earlier, because in the end, it's very easy. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be connected. And if you take even, quite honestly, I might even rework that model here, because I think that puts it in such simplistic but actionable solution, that it will help companies to think about it differently versus what's holistic support, what's empowering environment, and having to figure out these specifics. Now, we have much more information than just the header. And in the end, we'll basically provide information, say, okay, this is exactly how you can go about it. But I think very well said, Natasha. Now, let's wrap up this section, and then we go into the fun, hands-on activities. Now, top 3 key points for workplace impact on mental health. The first one, the workplace is a significant driver of stress. I hope we have made that point. Triggers. So triggers negatively impact mental health, which in turn lowers productivity. So these are the stress triggers. And then meeting employee expectations improves mental health. So if you, looking back at those 12 expectation categories, if you put an effort in place to address them in a positive way, it will remove the stressors. It will help with the mental health. I just saw, Julie, yes, we do have information I'll be happy to share with you. Actually, there will be a QR code where you can connect with Natasha and myself on LinkedIn. If you want to see what these 3 pillars are and more details around it, feel free to connect and we'll shoot that information off to you. It's free. This is something we're happy to share. And with that, here is Braxton Blue and his butterfly. But with that, we're going into promoting emotional safety. And so this is where we're looking back at something familiar, but this time Natasha has some key advice and recommendations on how to do it.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. I'm just checking. Julie, that was a really important question, and it's going to actually link into what we're doing. So again, all of this is coming from the emerging neuroscience on health and mental wellness and healing. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is what parts of the human being, of our neurobiology, actually keep us in that window of presence. And Michael, I didn't want to interrupt, but a couple of slides back where we all factored in what percentage had to do with family or work or with health or with finances. Those are our number one stressors, or what we call triggers. And during the pandemic, this piece is important. All 4 of them were impacting every individual. We were home with our families more. Our workplace demands were no longer predictable. Same thing with our health. There was a lot of fear around that. And of course, finances. So we're all really just recovering because our nervous system took the impact for the last couple of years. So a lot of us are really trying to just get back into that place of equilibrium and balance. And one of the ways that we can do that is by strengthening. Many of you might have heard about this because it's all over Instagram now, which is a good thing, but we want to make sure we have good information. It's actually called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is a nerve that develops immediately in childhood. It starts in the ear. I'll take you for a little exercise later, but that's hearing our mother or our father speaking gently to us. That tells the baby you're safe, you're okay. Same thing with eye contact, same thing with skin to skin. Developing this vagus nerve in childhood and infancy is extremely important because that's what tells the body you are safe and present to be here. Even if a kid picks on you, even if you don't get the question wrong, or even if mom's mad at you, you're still safe and secure. If you don't have a strong vagus nerve, right, you're more often kicked out of the blue. The great news now in adulthood is that we can actually develop our own vagus nerve. We can myelinate it ourselves. And we'll talk a little bit about that to strengthen us so that we're here more often, so that we can use our adult intelligence and our creativity to actually face all the challenges we have. In the meantime, though, however, if you are at work or with your family and you find yourself out of the blue, and you all know when you are, like I said, when you raise your voice, when your heart rate starts going, when you start overthinking something, or when you feel yourself shrinking, you are leaving the social engagement that's currently happening. So I'm just going to go over 3 quick things that are really wonderful that you can do. The first one is my favorite. It's actually called name it to tame it. And what that means is you want to actually tell your body and your nervous system, we're okay, everything's fine. So when you see yourself moving out of your window of presence, just say internally, right? I'm feeling a little anxious. There's a lot going on. I'm really nervous about what's happening. I'm fine. Right away, that will start bringing you back. This is a handy little thing that you can hold on to. And again, those of you that have children, really interesting to teach. And for those of you that want references, Dr. Dan Siegel, he's brilliant. So he teaches it about understanding that this here is your prefrontal cortex, and down here is the subcortex. This is the part that goes fight or flight. This is the part of you that's present. When you start feeling yourself leaving, if you say, I'm okay, everything's fine, it's just a bad meeting, or I just made a mistake or asked a question that didn't make any sense, as soon as you say that, right away, the 2 parts of your brain are speaking to each other. And it allows you to stay in your adult self of like wisdom and presence. So that piece I love. I don't know how you feel about it, Michael, but I use name it to tame it all of the time. So that's a fun one. The other one is called ABC. Again, really important small things. ABC stands for awareness, breath, and connect. Again, really important. If you feel yourself getting anxious or shutting down, become aware that that's what's happening. Again, we're engaging the part of the brain that can keep you present. Breath is key because it lets your body know you're actually not being chased by a lion. You're just feeling uncomfortable. So the breath piece, it's in through the nose, out through the mouth. It immediately calms your body down and doesn't make you flip your lid. The other ones are movement, really important. Even if you're in a meeting, just tap your leg underneath, right? Dr. Peter Levine talks about this all of the time. Your body doesn't want to feel as though it's trapped. So just letting your body know that you can move is really important and won't kick in all those extra neurochemicals. Even just take a pause and say, I just need to use the restroom. That'll let your body know that you're safe and in the room. Same thing with cold water and other things that might be helpful and useful for you. You can email me. I'm happy to send you a list of resources. Now the vagus nerve. So once you feel yourself going out of your window, you know how to bring yourself back. That vagus nerve and that myelinating it, which means strengthening it, you can do every day in your adult life in order to really build up a robust ability to stay present. That slow, deep breath is key. The vagus nerve also wraps around our vocal cords, and lots of research has shown singing or humming, even a couple minutes a day when you're in the car, will start to myelinate that nerve. You will notice a difference in up to 30 days, how things that used to trigger you before, you're able to sit with now. You're able to be present and respond to instead of run away or react to. No difference about sort of yoga, because that allows you to feel safe in your body, practicing that flow. Again, cold water is important. I know, Michael, you really like this one with some of the research that you've been doing yourself, but it just resets the nervous system, right? It really allows you to keep pregnant. And same thing with safe touch. Lots of research about releasing oxytocin in that way.
Yeah, every day cold showers is my way to go about it. And I really, really love that. Not everyone's thing, but I absolutely love it. I've been doing it for 2 years now, and I couldn't do without.
And a fun little trick with that one, because I'm not sure that I can do a full cold shower, but even the last 5 seconds of your hot shower, the last 10 seconds, really start moving your way into that slowly to being able to build up a tolerance for that. And again, I've already talked about lots of the benefits of a healthy vagus nerve, but really important to reduce that stress hormone, right? It takes a toll on you going up and down, going up and down. So you really want to be here more often. Same thing with your physical health, inflammation, blood pressure. Developing a really strong vagus nerve really helps with neurogenesis and even cultivating new healthy cells. Memory is important, better sleep. Again, the more present we are to our life, the more we can create our life, and the more our body is actually working optimally, which of course benefits overall physical health. So, right, we're all connected to ourselves and to each other. And I'd like to teach you another small little exercise. It only takes about 1.5 minutes. And if you do this every day, you will find a huge benefit in your ability to stay present. If you have kids, this is really fun. I keep bringing up the kiddos because I have 2 young sons, and their healthy vagus nerve is really important to me because I want them to be able to grow up confident adults that can withstand, right, what the world is like. It's not always a safe, comfortable place, but if you feel safe and comfortable in your body and you have the ability to respond to what's happening, you're going to do much better. So, vagal nurturing. If you're with me now, I ask you to participate. The vagus nerve begins in the ears. It wraps around the eyes. It runs along the jaw. Those of you that clench your jaw, that's what's happening. You're not in your window of presence. It then wraps around the heart and then wraps around your vital internal organs, right, around your abdomen. So again, individuals that are having digestive issues or Crohn's or IBS, all of this is really connected to the vagus nerve and your ability to stay present. I have a lot of really good information for you if you're interested in looking at the neuroscience of that. So as we move down the parts of the body to myelinate that vagus nerve, we're also going to do it with a specific breath. The breath is in through the nose and then out through the mouth. The exhale is twice as long and like you're breathing out of a straw. Okay, we'll do it together. So first, we're going to pull the ears and breathe in and then out. Good. Then we're going to go to the eyes, breathing in, breathing out. Twice as long, like you're blowing out of a straw. Then we're going to cup the jaw, breathing in, breathing out. Moving down to the heart, breathing in, out. And then wrapping our hands just to the belly, just below the navel, breathing in, out. Just take the top hand back to the chest, leave the lower one where it is, breathing in, out. And then just opening our arms to receive the day. You will find great benefit. I do this every time I touch the handle on my kids' door at school, just so I know that I'm going in ready so that they can be seen, heard, and connected by their mommy. Thanks, Michael. Oh, and I sort of want to point out, this was developed by Dr. Marty Glenn of the Risio Institute. If you want any information about them, they've got some great stuff.
Never felt so relaxed in a webinar. Thank you, Natasha. And that brings us to a sad face, but still a great photograph, not one of mine, overcoming loneliness. Loneliness is a big issue in the United States, and the research I found in support of that was actually shocking. Even so, I anticipated not a positive number, but this research found that 75% of people in the US experience loneliness. The interesting aspect here was the reason, and that's on the right-hand side. Loneliness isn't the physical absence of other people. It is the sense that you're not sharing anything that matters. And so keep that in mind. I think this is really important because we're so connected, we're hyper-connected. But do we really have the opportunity to share and to be seen holistically? Let me give you actually two pragmatic examples on how that expresses itself in the workplace and what you can do. Another set of research here found that 54% of employees that were asked in the survey if they were engaged answered yes, knowing that their manager supported them holistically. Only 17% of employees answered the question positively, meaning are you engaged, in the absence of having a manager that holistically supported them. If you do the quick math between the two numbers, that is a 318% increase in engaged employees with just one variable, and that is your manager really looking at you as a person versus just an employee? Or to say it differently, is your manager holistically looking at you and attempting to connect with you and support you? Now, that was really just the precursor to something that I have practiced for probably 10 years while I was the head of HR at a chemical manufacturing company in Tennessee. And I'll give you a very specific example. The question that I ask all of my direct reports every week, the front piece of the question always stayed the same. The end piece is what I varied. So I asked, what is one thing that would make your job, and then I would say either easier or more fun or more engaging, less stressful? So here's what happened when I asked this question for the very first time, the switchboard operator. Sue was the name. He said, Sue, hey, I have a question for you. Is there, what's one thing I could do to make your job more fun? And so she looked at me and she kind of cocked her head a little bit to the side and said, what is he asking? So she wasn't quite sure because it was the first time that I asked. It took her a minute to really think about the question, but I gave her the space to really think about it. And then she came back with saying, you know what? There's something that I do every week, and it takes about 6 to 8 hours of my work week. It's not a lot of fun. I'll do it, but it's not a lot of fun. I don't know if there's anything that you can do to help me with that. And so this task that she was referring to is the sales department, which she also supported, came back pretty much on a weekly basis from conferences with a stack of business cards, hundreds of them. And so her role in supporting the sales department was to enter all the information on the business card into our CRM system. And so her second statement was, do you know how small the font is on these cards? And I said, yeah, I think I do. The only thing I told her at that point in time is, let me take a look into it. So I didn't promise her anything. I did a little research. It didn't take long. You can already see what I came back with. It was in 2005. Business card scanners weren't that commonplace. I had it shipped directly to her. I happened to be in the hallway seeing when the package arrived and she unpacked it. The moment she realized what it was, she burst into tears. And I can tell you, I could not have made her that happy if I would have given her $500 cash, because it wasn't the value of the $79 business card scanner. It was the fact that I cared about her by asking the question and then took action in order to address it. And you probably now, or many of you probably say, I don't have the funds to do that. I can tell you, having done it for so long, 9 out of 10 times, it doesn't require money. It's moving furniture, it's changing a policy, it's doing something that helps them being heard, seen, and feel connected, just to touch base on these three again. And over time, you can build really close relationships with your employees without having to go through the awkward initial phase of, how was your weekend? If you never ask anything personally, because that's what many managers are struggling with. So let me summarize this quickly. Overcoming loneliness. 3 in 4 people experience loneliness in the US. That is a lot. Enabling people managers to invite the whole person to work, I think, is one of these core skills that companies need to invest in. And then the whole person focus increases engagement 3-fold and reduces loneliness. I think this is very powerful. I just wanted to quickly say again, this is a great resource. If you're interested, get in touch with Natasha. And here's how you can get a hold of both of us. So if you want to do it really easy, I mean, you can find Natasha easily on LinkedIn. My name, there are not too many who want to carry that last name either. So you can find me relatively easy, even without the QR code. And with that, I would suggest I'll open up for questions, and Paul is already back. So Paul, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Michael and Natasha. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. If people are putting in a question at last minute into the chat, that would be great. Now's the time to do it. I do want to bring to your attention a question that was asked about a half an hour ago, and I think your answer to it would be very interesting. The question is going back to the office post-pandemic, that is making connections in person, a reasonable way to improve mental health? Your thoughts?
That is a loaded question. But let me give you my view, and then I would love to hear Natasha as well, because I'm sure she has a very specific view on that. I think I'll give you if I would be a lawyer, I would answer it in the following way. It depends. Because some people can't wait to get back to the office because they need the social connection. They don't have anything in their environment that makes them concerned about having that face-to-face connection again. And they just love having people around them. And then there are others that fall into 2 camps. One camp is they really like working from home, but they don't have any other reason not to go back to work other than that they prefer working from home. And then I think the other camp is there are circumstances that either have arisen or developed over the last 2 years that really prevent individuals from going back to work as they used to. So different scenarios, which is the reason why I think the most reasonable approach for companies to take at this point in time is to have a lot of flexibility when it comes to returning to work, because it is just so different for people. And I think it's a great opportunity to demonstrate one of the 12 expectation categories, which we entitled personalized flexibility. So that would be my answer, but Natasha, I'd love to hear what you think.
I will second what you said around it depends. And it depends really about lots of people are at work, but aren't present. They're not seen, they're not heard, or they're connected. They're just kind of walking around task-oriented and focused. So it really comes down to individuals that can feel emotionally safe with connection and social engagement. Yes, it can be a very viable option, right? Not only the routine, predictability, and consistency of going to work every day and being with people, absolutely. And other individuals that are not feeling safe or not feeling comfortable, all of that work about going to work that doesn't feel safe or adds to triggers for them, it'll have the opposite effect. So it really is flexibility in the sense as we get back to creating what work-life balance is going to start looking like coming out of the pandemic.
And I think we have cases where companies have taken a clear stance on one side or the other, Tesla being one of them. I think I see the advantage of having people together. Innovation thrives, but I think it's very short-sighted to force everyone to come back to work. I don't think that's the right move right now. But again, it depends on the company. It depends on the people. There are many different variables. So I'm not saying it's a wrong decision altogether. It's just something that I would encourage companies to really think about long and hard and really play the flexibility card, because that's really what people want at this point in time.
This might sound strange, but we're also somewhat pioneers right now, pioneering the new way of how we're going to start building back our connections, our workplace, schools, everything. So having some patience and really keeping in mind those 3 pillars, as well as those 12 core values, are really integral in building up a society and structures that can lead to thriving.
Well, Natasha and Michael, I want to thank both of you for a wonderful presentation. Michael, can you advance it to the final slide there that we have for DILAN? Do you have that? One more. There we go. Thank you very much. I want to thank our presenters today for a wonderful presentation. Thank you all in the audience for attending with us today. If you want to get a hold of us at DILAN Consulting Group, here's our contact information. We look forward to engaging with you in the near future, and please reach out to us. Hopefully within the next week or so, we'll get out via our email distribution list information about our new DILAN Delivers webinar that will be coming up next month in September, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.